we have a problem. Although we now have increasing numbers of people studying science and technology to GCSE level, that's the peak. And in particular with women, the numbers just drop off from there on. So we lose women as we go through the hierarchy of science. Very few women take up apprenticeships. We have 13% of science, technology, engineering and mathematics jobs in the UK that are occupied by women. 9.3%, this is probably a little bit old, but it's probably still around that number, 9.3% of full-time professors in STEM departments are women. Actually, it turns out it's not good in general in the UK for other disciplines, but in particular it's really appalling for science disciplines. And that just gets worse and worse and worse the more senior one becomes. And this is what's known as the leaky pipeline. If you imagine a pipeline of people, women going through the system, we lose people along the way. We lose people, and that means we're doing something wrong. Something isn't quite right. Okay? They're lost to UK science.
It's great. And normally I get to speak to rooms full of women, which is kind of a bit like an echo chamber. So I'm really grateful that the guys are along as well. So girls don't game. How many times have I heard that in my life? Quite a few. I am, as Michael said, I'm a technology reporter. I work on BBC. Anybody watch BBC Click? A few BBC Click viewers. So BBC Click is the BBC's flagship technology show, which is hidden away on BBC World for some random reason. And I'm actually the longest serving technology reporter there. I've been with them for 12 years. So how did I go from being pretty much probably the worst student my teachers had ever had, to somebody who was this year was voted the 13th most influential woman in UK IT. Like so many women of my generation, it was a male influence in my life that got me into technology. My brother, 2 years older than me, his name is Matt, and he got into technology, and because of his interest in technology, I got into it as well. So, as well as learning to play the game, or wanting to play the game, I would see my brother beginning to learn to code on the computer at home. And one of the first lines of code many people back then would write in BBC Basic was 10 print, a line of text, in my brother's case, and Matt is awesome, 20 go to 10. And when you execute that command, it basically repeats the comment that is in the speech marks over and over and over again. So, as his younger sister, I had to say I had a problem with this. First of all, Matt wasn't awesome. And secondly, I wanted to learn how to do it too. So consequently, my first line of code was 10 print, Matt is rubbish, 20 go to 10. Which had a double impact. First of all, it really annoyed my brother, which was job done as far as the younger sister is concerned. But secondly, it started to teach me about the nature of communicating with computers. And although when you look at computer languages now, various different types of code, it's very complex and it looks very complex. It's just like any other language. And ultimately what you're doing is you're communicating with your computer. And actually when it boils down to it and you understand the language, fairly simple terms, what you want it to do. Because it really was such a fundamental leap of understanding, going from not having computers to having computers. It was a bit like looking in through the door of the TARDIS. You kind of like, sitting on the kitchen table was this box, this little square box with a screen, and in it was this seemingly infinite world.
Someone I was really inspired by was one of the Italian professors, so Dr. Marina Resmini, who I did summer studentship with, and she was incredibly supportive. Her whole group was European, so again it was a fantastic opportunity to work with people that weren't from London, weren't from the UK. But she was perceived as being a bit of a hard ass, quite tough. You know, there weren't that many women in the department, and so again, whereas we're talking about language and choice of language that you have when describing people, she was seen as tough and authoritative. Whereas, a male counterpart would be seen as assertive. So again, it was quite difficult, these sort of perceptions and the language we choose to use when we're describing other women. So, successfully finished my undergraduate degree, and I was like, well, I knew I wanted to have a career in science at that point. I wasn't sure initially about research, but thankfully that time with Marina really convinced me. So I started looking elsewhere because I felt that, again, for your career, I thought it was important that I move so that it wasn't accused of nepotism, because again, if you're a woman, you get picked by another woman, you must be because you're female and you're all sticking together. So I thought, okay, fine, I'm going to branch out and go somewhere else. So I left to go to the University of Bristol, and I decided to do a different type of PhD at the time. It was one of the first of its kind, and it was a centre for doctoral training, so it was the chemical synthesis one. What was interesting is these sort of CDTs work that you have sort of 9 to 12 months of these short placements. So you often talk about the research project before you do it. And so we were assigned the project and we had to discuss them as groups. So random assignment meant that the women couldn't work together. So I was like, well, that's a bit weird. Surely if it's random, at some point we would be allowed to work together. But we were openly split up. So I was like, that's a bit strange. So I, spoke to the cohort manager about this, because again, there weren't that many of us girls, so we did get on quite well. And he just said, it's random, just get on with it. And I was like, okay, fine, maybe they just do things differently and I misunderstand what random means. So, one of the other things that came up, which I'm sure a lot of you have come in contact with, whether it's maths-based, so a lot of things that we do in chemistry involve us rearranging molecules in our heads and such that we can change the configuration. So one of my peers said that women are worse at rearranging things in space, full stop. This was just a comment that everyone in the room just sort of accepted it, and I was like, well, surely at this stage we've overcome this, we've all got to PhD level, surely this is no longer an issue. And again, I raised this as something that's not really appropriate, and the student was reprimanded. So again, this sort of imbalance, if an academic, so someone that is your superior, says that women can't work together, because goodness knows what they'll get up to, whereas if a guy sort of, puts you down, that needs to be dealt with. And I think he actually ended up having to go to, gender sensitivity training or something equally harsh. I'm sure that guy's never going to speak to me again.
To empower women in STEM at King's and beyond to pursue a career that they'll love no matter what the odds are. So we've been talking about the leaky pipeline. We also want to inform all people about the experiences and the achievements of women in STEM at King's. We're an intersectional feminist society, so we support all people who identify as women and non-binary people as well. We understand that different women face different barriers, so that could be depending on their age or if they have disability or their ethnicity or religion. We keep women in the spotlight, so our workshops are run by women and our panels, they feature only women, but all our members are of all genders. So what we've done so far, so we launched in February of this year, so we're really new. So we had a launch event where Professor Luck came to as well, and we had a panel of speakers. We've had some Python workshops, which we collaborated with MathSoc on those. We've done LaTeX workshops as well, which were sponsored by the Maths department. We've done 2 T for Academics events, which actually have been sponsored by the NMS Gender Equality Fund and the Informatics department.
Hi, a question to all members of the panel. If we accept that we have to get students as young as they are, at the age of 5 most likely, what is the opinion about gendered, separated classrooms then?
I also went to an all-girls secondary school, and so I would say that I think that perception of it's for boys wasn't really a thing that I felt. And obviously I was lucky enough to have that same feeling when I did go to an undergraduate studies. So yeah, I think there's been lots of those saying that girls work better with girls and boys work better with girls. So it's a bit of a difficult balance. So are we punishing the girls if they are having co-education? Obviously most comprehensive schools will be co-educational as well. So the answer is I'm not sure. Obviously everyone is different. I would say if we are genuinely worried about this perception, then maybe to have more options for gender separation at a younger age when it is more formative, when they are more self-aware, that might be something that then maybe when they get into A level, then we can have co-educational. So yes, I would say that would probably be something that's beneficial and should be more available to more of our young people.
I would say there's an age thing here. Like if we're talking about preschool and that kind of 5 to 7 years old or up to 7 years old, I would say there's no need to separate boys and girls because the boys aren't the problem, the teachers are the problem at that point. But once you get into sort of like further into sort of like, you know, secondary school, I would love to say that separating boys and girls is not beneficial, but at this point in our evolution and at this point in our combating the problem, it is undoubtedly a benefit, because apart from anything else, young girls at age 14 to 16, they suffer from unconscious bias because they've been fed over the last 20 years or the first 14 years of their life, they've been fed this biased opinion of what girls and boys should like, and likewise boys. So, you know, Google got criticised last year because they brought out a website called Made, I think it was Made by Code or something, and they had a whole load of coding projects that were supposed to appeal to girls, and they were like making a bracelet, you know, making a toy. And you know, they got criticised for that. But you know, I've got 17 nephews and nieces, and I'm sorry, but my 9 to 14-year-old nieces, they like pink stuff, they like fairies, they like ponies, they like dolls, they like making jewellery, they like doing loom bands, you know. And if it takes us to get more girls into the classroom at university level to start giving that vision of a more balanced environment, if it takes us creating projects that are going to appeal to them by making them about boy bands or, you know, whatever it is they're interested in, then I think we have to kind of like bite back our feminist impulses and say, let's bite the bullet, let's create environments and projects where girls are going to be interested, engaged and flourish. And hopefully the next generation of young kids coming through, we won't have to do that with. But I think at the moment, unfortunately, as much as it gets me into trouble in all of my feminist friend circles, I think we have to. I think we have to at the moment for that slice of the population.